One. And we are recording on Monday, August 11th, 2025 at 12:02 p.m. Eastern Time with Mr. Ric Prado, who's been on here once before. I believe I got to know you through Baz and had you on here for your book Black Ops, the link of which is in the description. It's a fantastic book. The one thing I always remember from it, above all else, was the first time you tried like the fully automatic pistol. I don't know why. But you talk about like the guy did like, triple tap and you're like, how does that work? I know you're not that fast of a shot. And it turns out that was your first experience with that. I don't know why. That's what stuck in my mind, but that's how I remember you the best. So, Mr. Prado, could you tell everyone who you are and then we'll jump on into it?
Like you said, my name is Ric Prado. I am a New York Times bestseller uh, author of Black Ops, which is a book that I wrote from the heart. I never wanted to be an author, but my senior agency bosses kept hounding me about putting something out there that was realistic about the agency, and eventually I caved in and did. I'm very glad I did. It's gotten a very good response, and uh, I'm Cuban born, came to this country as a legal refugee to a orphanage in Pueblo, Colorado. Moved up the ranks of social status from, dire poverty to middle class, thanks to my mom and dad's hard work. Joined Air Force Pararescue in 1971. I joined CIA in 1981, and with a lot of stuff in between. So that's about it in a nutshell.
The second thing I remember very well from your book, and because I think I first remember it because it was interesting, but as time has gone on, I've thought about it, and I think it's actually applicable to everyday life, which is hard to do in a book like yours where that's anything but everyday life. It's not like you're talking about your time as a cashier where most people can identify with that, is the notion that you and some other friends in the agency had about the real agency, the agency within the agency, the real top secret, above Black Ops, and they're the ones who are really doing it. And as you work your way through it and up it and were there for longer and longer amounts of time, you realize that wasn't there. And, at first, as somebody who just loves anything thrill, it's like, oh, that's a letdown. But I actually think it's applicable to, in an odd way, it is kind of be the change you want to see in the world. You realize we all want the patriarchal figure. We all want whether we admit it or not. You like the idea of somebody watching, and for a lot of us, it's God, but do you like the idea of like someone somewhere? They're controlling it. The real guys, they got it down pat. And when you see that there is no CIA within the CIA, it's the feeling of like I'm 35 now, and I look back at I'm like, oh man, my parents had no idea what they were doing when I was born. I was just like, mom and dad know. And now that I'm 5 years older than they were, I'm like, oh God, it's terrifying. I'm stringing together of paying bills and getting gas and car insurance. I think that is an enlightening realization to have when you are in, the Hall of Shadows, to realize that it's not there. And it's daunting because it means that you have to be that. How did that bleed over into your time there? Or how has that affected your thinking from then?
Well, first of all, you have a very good memory. That particular episode for me was that was like the in the hall, like a joke kind of thing. I don't think anybody really believed that there was an
Sure.
agency in the agency, but it was our way of expressing among each other that we could always do more. And I think that that's one of the strong points of Black Ops, my book, is that it does show a lot of sexy operations. Nothing like what you see on TV, but still sexy, still dangerous, still successful. And that's within what they allowed me to talk about. But I think to back to your original question on this, I came into the agency not knowing anything about the agency. Just like I went into the military not knowing anything about the military. I had been in this country like 8 years, and I didn't know the difference between Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marines. So for me, you mentioned having a protector. My protector definitely is God, and I believe that I was put on this earth for a particular mission, and I had the courage to follow it. So I came into the agency first not knowing what the agency was really about. I mean, I know they spied and they did ops and all that other fancy, fun stuff. Uh, but I also came in without the ambition of being director of operations or any of that. I wanted to kick ass, take names, maybe, and, pay back this wonderful country for allowing me and my family to become, Americans. So, absolutely. Now, I want to specify that's not unique to me. We have a lot of officers that come to the agency. Sure, you have your political individuals that rise pretty quick because they're primarily political. They still contribute, they still do work. We need them all. I mean, I was a senior officer and but ended up in the street my last 2 years. So there's plenty of good people, and that's one of the reasons that Black Ops is important to me because we have lost a lot of people in the agency. We have 141 stars. That might not sound like a lot to the Army, but we are smaller than the FBI. And the operational component within the agency is the smallest of the directorates. So we're pretty close to it. So when you have 141 out of a very limited number, that's a substantial, and a third of that is post 9/11. And that was the tipping point for me to write Black Ops was the fact that I felt that I owed the parents, the children of our fallen, something that the widow could give them and say, this is what daddy, this is what mommy did during the war. This is the kind of stuff CIA really does. And how else can you explain it to your kids when all they see is Jason Bourne, maniacal assassin with 17 personalities, blah, blah, blah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is an insane figure. I read a book last year, I think. Yeah, called Empires of the Sky. It was all about the early Zeppelins in World War One. And the same thing is like you read like the total number dead, and you're like, that's World War One. You're like tens of millions, and the Zeppelin, it's like 280, and you're like, why is that so revered? It turns out like the entire operational component was like 300, and you get this like, oh, okay,
I get it.
and
Yeah.
it's but this is crazier because there's a whole nother aspect to it. It's none of that was classified. Now imagine that, and you go, "Well, what happened?" And you go, I can't tell you. That really is the sort of embodiment of the term, like, don't do the right thing. Do the right thing when no one's looking. No one looking to judge you and nobody looking to congratulate you. What are you doing? What I call it's like, what am I doing off air? Who are the people I talk to off air and help off air? And there's no show to pat myself on the back about. That's a wild component, is that it's all completely wrapped up, and then and then people have suspicions of where they go, and it's a natural human responses. Well, classification also means that they can cover up mistakes or incompetence or maliciousness, which, man, it's a pretty easy target to hit when there is no pushback and the people who would argue back can't because it's classified. That's a difficult thing, to do the right thing and not be able to illuminate anyone about it under threat of jail. That's what is that for you?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's like everything in life, it's a balance and a two-edged sword, okay? For one thing, it is you do not go into the CIA to become a popular, well-recognized individual, okay? The badge that I had on my chest when I went in as a GS-10 was the very same badge with an updated photo when I was, flag rank SIS-2. We don't wear our, medals on our suits. We don't wear, our jump wings because we were paramilitary. None of that. We have a blue badge and that's all that's allowed there. But the other side of that is the camaraderie that it breeds. The outside world will never know truly what we do and how we do it. But among ourselves, that secrecy is what keeps us a tighter group because you can't tell anybody else outside that family group. But you mentioned something that again I try to clarify throughout the book. I always use the phrase that we enjoy incredible oversight in the agency. And that might sound an oxymoron for an operator that really likes to go out and bite shit, right? But we, everything we do, Bay of Pigs fiasco, it wasn't the CIA. It was the administration forcing change plans from the
Hmm.
original, this, that, and the other. There's always somebody in the White House. On my special programs at the last 2 years of my life, I briefed Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice in person.
Yeah.
So, there is no, oh, we didn't know Rick was going to go out and try to do. No, that's there. We take the hit if we have to, because obviously I'm a lot less important than anybody that walks around in the White House. So, that comes with our territory. But like I said, I think that the positive, the negative you outlined extremely well. The positive is the fact that part of our fraternity, part of our brotherhood comes from the fact that only we know what we do and we have done. And this that you could be at the table with 6 or 7 different agencies, and there's another agency guy across the thing that kind of winks at you like, yeah, we know that's bullshit. Oh yeah, we know that that's true. So, it's a bonding thing.
That's got to be a difficult, I don't know, gap to bridge of letting it go on to the next generation, right? Like I look at, just in my own limited experience, this podcast, but doing it for almost 6 years, it's 100% me. I don't have any employees. I do it all, scheduling to, marketing to revenue to whatever. And I look at, other friends with shows that have whole teams of people and they don't manage to do the same numbers as me. And I look at it and I'm like, I don't think I would be comfortable handing this off to anyone. And it's a large amount of ego of like, you can't do what I do. But you then have to have a humble moment and go, am I the first person to build their own thing out of nothing? And no, no. What are you talking about? That's every entrepreneur ever since cavemen till now. And I don't like believe it in my gut, but I have to rationally simply by looking around and go, other people can do it too. If I was able to, other people can do it. That's got to be a tough thing to hit that apex of where you're briefing Dick Cheney. It's classified, unclassified, unclassified, the smallest number. It's you are the cohort inside the concentric circles. And once you get to that point, you realize there is no one looking after you. It's just you guys. You rise to the occasion and you truly do the Lord's work. And then you got to look at some new guy coming in as you're on your way out and be like, all right, you got this. There's got to be some hesitancy of like, no, you don't have this. Like, it's like Tom Brady leaving the NFL. I guarantee you, it doesn't matter what he says. He's probably not happy with whoever takes his spot. Not because they're taking his spot, because he's like, dude, I'm Tom Brady. I mean, you can try to mimic me. Is there some of that where you see some new guy coming in? You're like,
Well, our agency is so different. For example, one thing that in the military, as you know, I have a special military background also. There's a very well delineated pipeline that you go through this school, that school, that school, that school. You get your beret, and then you go through this school and that school and that. In the agency, after going through the farm, 90% of our training is on the job training. So, Joe McGillicuddy, who just came in, is not going to take over for Ric Prado in 2004 when he retires as chief of ops at the Counterterrorist Center. But Ric Prado has groomed dozens and dozens and dozens of like-minded, hardworking men and women to fill those roles. And I've done a lot of mentoring inside the agency and post career. I've always told my subordinates, people that I'm trying to grow, your job as a leader, as a future leader, is to take your D employee, make them a C, take your C employer, make them a B, take your B employer, make them an A, and then take your A employees and make them your replacement.
oh,
So there's this grooming. And like I said, for example, when you go through the farm, you come out, you think that you are Mario Andretti. You can drive that car around, at whatever speed, you are hot caca, right? Well, you just went through high school ed, driver's ed. And you get to a station and you have a chief of station. And if you're even in a mid-sized station, um, he's not your immediate supervisor and neither is his deputy. So you have like a branch chief and then you have the deputy chief of station, the chief of station, and so on. So you come in fresh out of the farm, all full of piss and vinegar, and you start getting taskings, or you go out and start trying to meet people. Every time you go, you're scrutinized. You sit across from whoever your supervisor is, and they will ask you 1,000 questions that you haven't thought of. How are you going to get there? What are you going to do? What you going to ask? What are the points that you need to make? What if this happens? What's your surveillance detection route? Let me check it. And is that kind of scrutiny? The first 2 years or 3 years of a first tour officer are very limited in the spectrum of things that they're allowed to do because you need for them to learn to drive fast, but you can't afford for them to wreck your car
Mm.
because becomes a political football then if they're caught doing something because you did not groom them step by step. And then your second tour, you're given a little bit more of a leash. And then by your third tour, you're usually like a GS13. That's considered craftsman. And that's when you started being trusted for being deputy branch chief or branch chief or something like that. So
So there's no big moment where you become the guy. It's less of, it's less of a new iPhone where you replace the 15 with the 16. It's more of a, what is it, the ship of Theseus, or it's, your finger, the cells in your fingernail, they don't replace, your fingernail doesn't fall off and then it regrows. It's, you don't even see it. Your hair, your teeth, it's all just a little bit, to the point where, was it like every 15 years all your cells turn over? So I'm on my third body, but there's never been a moment. It's just as slow. I'd imagine you'd have to do it at that level too. You probably wouldn't want
without
to
a doubt,
have.
I mean, this is something that goes on infinitum.
Yeah.
You will always have a boss because even the director of CIA has a boss called the President of the United States. So everybody has a boss and it goes up the ladder. Um, and you're always learning. I was blessed with the exception of one guy, really, really incredible leaders. And I don't mean managers. I don't believe, my agency cannot thrive with managers, not in the operational field anyway. Um, but I had from the very beginning individuals that took me under their wing and taught me the ropes, like and teach us to pass that on, because that is exactly how we rise through the ranks, and that's how we groom our individuals. I'll give you an example. The last team, and you read the book, so at the end there, when I was back in the street, I went from managing 300-400 people to a team of 12, and I was leading it, going all over the world. I had four male case officers, one female case officer. We had a lot of female surveillance and all that other stuff, but the core team, um, all five of them, all five of my operators retired at higher senior ranks than me. And I retired as an SIS2, which protocol wise at least is in our world is like, major general kind of stuff. Um, that tells you that I'm more proud of that sometimes than some of the stuff that I've done because I know what these guys have gone on and done and gals, and they all made it to the top. So
Yeah, that's got to be the best pat on the back, is to not even find a replacement, but to find someone that did better than you, broke your whatever 100-meter record. It's, I would imagine part of you would be like, damn it. But another part of most of you would be like, that's awesome. That's awesome. And also, it shows you it's possible. It shows you that the guy who brought you in, you can probably now see in hindsight, was probably worried about you, and then he was proud of you. And it's kind of the idea of like, the kids are all right. When you see something, you go, I mean, I already feel like an old man. I'm th 35 now. There's, Gen Z and Gen Alpha below me. And then every once in a while you see something somebody does, or you see them standing up to censorship or to, kind of woke oppression, and you're like, hey, they're not total shitheads. Like, okay. And then you realize like, oh, that's how my dad probably looked at me, or still looks at me, and on and on. That's got to be somewhat of a, I wouldn't say optimistic, maybe, I don't know if satiating is the right word, but there's got to be a feeling of, you're walking away from the cockpit and you're not at all concerned. They've got it.
Yeah, and that's what you always hope for. I will give you an example. I was in a South American country that I can't mention, but it's almost very obvious when you read the book. It's kind of funny. I had it was my first counterterrorism tour, and which was my third tour because the first two were the paramilitary side with the Contras. And and I was handling some really, really important assets. I had recruited an actual terrorist from a very radical group. Plus, I was dealing with some really hard ass assets that were part of the local government unilaterally helping them to get the mission done against terrorism. And so my boss calls me in and he says, "Hey, you're going to headquarters for that meeting?" Yes, sir. He says, "Well, they want you to stop at such and such an office and meet your replacement." I said, "Sure, okay." Well, we have them all, and I'm not saying that this guy wasn't a good case officer, but again, you got to be selective of what tool you use on what problem, right? I show up, and this guy was about 5'11", probably weighed 145 pounds, had a bow tie and a seersucker suit. And he sat there picking his nails, and I'm going like, my guys will eat this guy alive, alive. So I went back and luckily I had a very good chief of station and I had a very good relationship with him because I was doing some great shit for him. So I told him, I said, if they send this guy here, this program is down the tubes.
Yeah.
So he tried to change it. They said, well, that's the only guy, the only person that's available. Not everybody steps up to go to a really danger post, especially if you have, families to also worry about. I'm different. So there was a young officer, first tour officer, Bobby D, and first tour officer, but he was a man. He would catch on. He was doing a great job, and even though he was a first tour officer, at the end, I went to my chief of station. I said, "Give it to Bobby." He says he will do you right. He comes across as somebody. He's got his stuff together. In that field of predators, when you're dealing with predators, you cannot look like food.
Give me a
And Bobby
seersucker
did,
suit.
and Bobby did a fantastic job. And as a matter of fact, the same little unit that I started, he built on, and shortly thereafter, they captured the head of the main terrorist group because of that little cell that we were helping that country unilaterally to do, because again, you got corruption and drug and all this other stuff going on that you had to be really selective who you dealt with. But that's a true story. And he went on to be chief of station and senior grade and everything else, but he made his bones on the streets of a very dangerous place on his first tour. That's pretty macho.
That's insane. Yeah, and to select for that as opposed to seersucker. In terms of, and I remember what we talked about last time was, and history is always so easy in hindsight. You wrap it up, you have start dates and end dates. And September 1st, 1939, August 9th, 1945, Blitzkrieg bombing in Nagasaki. You bookend it well, and JFK died on this day, and preemptively that's, just 6 years before landing on the moon. It's all very easy, and it's also very false because you're looking at it in hind. I mean, even this podcast, this is episode 1807. I look back 5 years and I'm like, yeah, oh, of course you would make your way and you'd have to sidestep censorship algorithms, corruption in companies, find different sponsors. Oh, that sponsor fucked you. Oh, but this one was legit. And I look at it now and I go, yeah, there's really no reason to worry, man. But if I look back at it, I go, I was horrified every day of my life. Like, how am I? Even to now, I go, so you got it figured out now? And I go, oh, absolutely not. I have no idea. Sure, I'm having on you today. I don't know what tomorrow brings. I don't know who the next sponsor is. How am I going to pay rent? I got him. And I know in 5 years, I'll look back and be like, oh, no, dude, you figured it out. You did that, that, and the other thing. Looking back at Cold War history, what we take now as, you know, like, well, duh, yeah, the agency did that. They're the top dogs and they pull off X, Y, and Z, whatever, infiltrating these companies or deniable assets there or whatever. It is then easy to forget that no, they stand at that precipice too. And the thing they did was not history. It was an absurdity. Like I just finished reading about Project Azorian, right? Picking up that Russian sub, and you're like, yeah, we take that as history now, but that was wild. They must be standing on that precipice now, and I would imagine two major fields. And it would be artificial intelligence and space dominance. Do you feel, because last time you said you think they'll take care of it. I forget what I had mentioned last time, probably like social media or something. Do you still have that feeling that is a nerve-wracking endeavor, but if anyone's going to take it on, it's the agency?
Without a doubt. We have a joke that says that if it was easy, State Department would do it.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's the truth. And the State
Sure.
Department is an incredible tool. I mean, let's face it. We're called the third option, tertia opio, because the first option is diplomacy. If diplomacy doesn't work, the second option is military. Well, those may not be viable either. That comes a third option, is what the agency is supposed to do. Could we do more? Always. Leadership is everything. When I started the Bin Laden Task Force with Mike Scheuer in 1996, January 1996, the administration did not believe all the stuff that Bin Laden was doing. And every time we came up with a plan based on Billy Waugh's observation, about Billy, we've talked about that before, and other, subsequent, scrutiny that we had on him and oversight, uh, we knew that we could have taken him out
Hmm.
in 97, 98. And I don't mean just shooting him in the face. We could have kidnapped him and brought him into justice and interrogation. And the administration kept saying, no, we don't have enough proof that he's a bad guy. So you have dozen liaison services within intel services telling you, yeah, he's doing stuff in my country. You have our own sources. You have his own admissions. You have overhead of the camps that he's built and what they're training on, because we're looking at them through satellite, and you still don't have the testicular fortitude to allow your operators to do their job preemptively. And especially in counterterrorism, disrupt and preempt is our motto. That is what we are supposed to do. So, it's always been humorous to me. Like you said, once you get to a particular place, you look back, but the granularity of developing all these things, it's a very esoteric profession. If it's easy, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
I'm sure that when you go to the bank, you come out of your house, and you maybe have awareness. You look around, make sure there's nobody with a baseball bat or something. You get in your car, you go to the bank, you withdraw your money, you stop at 7-Eleven, grab a Slurpee, and come back home, right? Well, I can't do that because every time I leave, I have to see if I'm under surveillance. I cannot take the same routes. So the shortest distances from point A to point B doesn't work in our business. So it's very counterintuitive. And the thing that I try to explain to people when we're talking senior leadership in any federal organization or any organization, if you are picked from the outside and brought in, chances are you're not going to be as good as you could have been. Okay, and here's why. You could take the fighter pilot of the year, the pilot of the decade, two-star general, runs this flight wing, and he's got 14 kills, blah blah blah, and you put him in charge of the 82nd Airborne. He's still a two-star, but he has no credibility.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand the granularity. And in our case, I'll give you an example with me. Like I said, I recruited a terrorist in that particular country. I had to meet this guy every couple of 2, 3 weeks in a dark alley with body armor, with two guns, a radio, and no backup. Okay. So if you are the boss, my boss's boss's boss, and you've never done that, when you get that intelligence report from Ric Prado that says, hey, tomorrow they're going to blow this stuff up, which they did. Luckily, it wasn't us, but we were able to predict it by 2 days. Um, how do you say, wow, this is priceless. I can only imagine what this guy went through to get this guy to this point where he would, they have no clue. Oh, they go, oh, this is really cool stuff. Let me show you the president. And they get their pat in the back. And but there's no empathy for what we do. The other side of that coin also applies. Respect. How can I respect somebody who all that he or she knows about the agency is the 3 weeks worth of briefings that they got before they took over the organization? I don't care how well you understand nuclear science, or medical, unless you've done it, you don't have the credibility with the rank and file. So,
And I imagine just in my own, the thoughts that are coming up subconsciously, reflexively, that I'm not even formulating. Yeah, my first reaction is thinking like arrogance, like a arrogance and anger. I'd be like, dude, they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know what they're doing, and we all know that it doesn't take too many brain cells to realize or to imagine how long does that go on before you start, becoming what people accuse the CIA of just being a shadowy, tight-knit group. I mean, how many of your own guys do you see get killed or things go south and civilians get whacked? And yeah, you got your seersucker guy going like, well, this is really cool. I mean, how long would that take me before I stopped really telling everyone everything? Because I'd be like, you don't understand what this is, and like, you have no respect for it, and you don't know what we go through. Yeah, I mean, it's not right, but I can see myself if I'm in there going like, yeah, I'm not telling them everything. I'll give them the little thing that they want because that's all they deserve. But that's well, and then that spirals, and then the other side starts feeling that, and then that's how you get a schism. But I think that's how I would feel.
well, let me tell you, the biggest non-sexual fantasy of a case officer to get a piece of intelligence tonight that is on the president's desk tomorrow morning.
Sure.
So that, I mean, that is our gold standard for intel collection, right? Obviously, we have covert action and that's black ops and all that other stuff, which again, it's even harder but it's based on the other side of the house doing that kind of work, the intelligence gathering and everything else. One of the things that makes the agency officers very unique is that we work singleton. When the FBI knocks on somebody's house, they always have at least two people with them.
Yeah.
When we meet an agent, when we meet an asset, we're by ourselves. So if the main quality that you have to have as a case officer is integrity. Because if you are my asset and you say to me, Mary had a little lamb and her fleece was white as snow, but I forgot to ask you where Mary, where the little lamb went, or who's Mary, and I make that up, who's going to contradict that?
Mm.
We have to be so. That's why people don't understand why is writing so important in the agency. Because again, you want to have that intel that nobody has to rewrite before it hits that president's desks. Okay. But the integrity that takes to put the right things and the true things, how else do you corroborate? If you don't have confidence in what somebody is reporting to, what the asset is reporting, that the case officer is not exaggerating or obfuscating or whatever, that will get you fired in the agency. Stealing money from your operational fund and lying about any piece of intelligence will get you fired on the spot. And I've seen people that did stupid stuff and they just walk up to your desk at one time, they take your badge, they walk you out of the building, they pack your stuff, and your problems begin. Because we have to have that oversight. We cannot afford, we take polygraphs often, and that's one of the things that always comes up. Are you truthful in your reporting? Have you ever made up something? And some people ping on it, most don't, because you are looking for the right information. So,
I imagine it's also got a Well, being in the agency, I'm sure it's not difficult to believe in conspiracies if you're part of them. You know, there's you often you're like, no, no, yeah, you know, it's not hard for me to believe I was there. Um, I see it just with this podcast it's doing well, 51,000 subscribers, 1,800 episodes, make just enough to pay the. I'm psyched. I'm thrilled. Long future ahead of it, and I'm very proud of like the guests I get. When people like, how do you get that guy? I'm so proud of that because it's like, well, I had to get this guy first, and then that led to this. Or I read these books and I made sure, you know, I got his attention for 30 seconds on the phone. I hit him with two facts real quick, and he goes, you know what, screw it. I'll let this young kid interview me. Some of these guests I get, and then I'll see in comments, like I got Ken Alibek, who's the head of the Soviet Union bioweapon program. CIA smuggled him out of the Soviet Union in 1993. And I think his only interview was like a Senate testimony, and he just stopped going on air. And I tracked him down, found the company he worked for, found out the secretary, went on and on and on. Finally got his attention, and he was like, "I will come on your show, but I don't want to talk about bioweapons." And in my mind, I'm like, "Well, you you but there comes the integrity where I go, you know, I could start asking him questions, but I'm like, that's so I look at all the time I did, and I go, yes, sir. Like, yeah, we'll talk about whatever you want. We're 2 minutes in, and he's like, "So when I got into bioweapons," and I'm like, "Oh," I got the whole interview I wanted. When I look at just the amount of, and for every guest people see, they don't see every email that just doesn't go answered, which is fine. When I then see things in comments, like I can almost predict what that there will be for this. Like Tommy giving the agency another mouthpiece. Who's this guy? You know, who Tom, you know, whose ass did he have to kiss to get this guest? Or isn't it weird how you start getting, how did this podcaster with no employees, no help, how did he get this guest? Like, doesn't he kind of seem like a Fed? And I get, on one hand, it's a compliment because if you look at what I do and the only way you can rationalize it is I'm a federal asset, I'm like, well, that's kind of cool because I know I'm not. The other side, I go, I don't really get angry at them. I do, and that's ego and narcissism and all that shit. But what it does, in my mind, I go, like one guest I've had on a ton this year is a guy's an EM Burlingame, finances, and then went to special forces. Cool guy. And I've had him on, and some of the other dudes that have shows have asked me, because a lot of us exchange guests. And so he's gone on these other shows. And you'll see people commenting, like, where did this guy come from? He comes out of nowhere. You know how I got him? I was on Twitter, and he wrote an article about, you know, comparing, you know, the Roman Praetorian Guard to the modern one. And I only clicked on it because there was a cool graphic. It was a little bird, you know, helicopter next to like a guy in a Roman gladiator, and I was like, oh, that's a cool image. And I just said, hi, my name's Tommy Carrigan. Here's my show. Here's the people of it. I would love to have you on, which is how I get 99% of my guests. So my point is sometimes it's just a silly like, what do you mean? How did I get them? I asked them, and then other things where I go, I'm not an ad. I put so much work into getting that guest. So my point in this whole tirade is it makes me re-examine things, not just in podcasting or other fields, but on a much higher level, geopolitical intelligence, supranational. And I go, yeah, it's not all who's pulling the strings. I'm like, I would imagine the way they got that was probably a lot of work. And even you talking about like, I wonder how they got that information. Well, he probably put on body armor, had two guns and a radio, and was like mostly sure he was going to get back alive, you know, said a prayer to God and was like, let's go do the right thing. Does any of that, do you get that at all when you look at, sure, some things are conspiratorial, they are massive operations. Are there other things you look at where you go, how did I do it? Hard work, sacrifice. Like, do you ever get that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, conspiracy theories. I'm the draw of conspiracy theories is that opinions are like noses. Everybody has one, and people come up with these things that you sit there, you go, "What insane asylum did you come out of?"
Yeah,
But then there's also the misinterpretation of conspiracy theories. Okay, um, I give you proof. The CIA is not able to just go out and kill somebody without the right authorities.
yeah,
We have Title 50 authorities It's the only federal agency that has Title 50 authorities, and there's only one person that can sign those. That's the President of the United States.
Mm.
So for real heavy covert action or black ops, as we call them, that's the level of scrutiny and direction that we have. So it's so easy when we cannot defend ourselves because the FBI can have Ruby Ridge today. Next week they shoot Dillinger. Whoa! Everybody
Yeah.
remembers the FBI is the one that shot Dillinger. Great. Everybody forgets about Ruby Ridge. Well, I can recruit Putin's secretary today, and I can't tell anybody.
Nope.
But I have a car accident because I had one drink too many, and that's going to make it, front page news. CIA spy drunk hits a mailbox. Whatever it is. I'm making that up, of course.
Yeah.
But it's just that spectrum of credibility. So there are theories of conspiracy theories that have been fact based. But living inside the agency, you don't see those because you know what your chain of command is. It isn't just your branch chief coming to you and say, "Hey, I need you to go to TDY to, bumfuck Egypt and recruit this guy or break this guy's car or bug his car or whatever." No, you know that the group chiefs signed off on it, the division chief signed off on it, the DCI signed off on it. There's no conspiracy there. Now, I would say that there's more conspiracy theories at a higher level
Sure.
when you have the high end politics that can go on and have and could always go on, but to different degrees. I think that's where the majority of your conspiracy theories really start gaining traction because pragmatism at that level, um, people can justify so much. I never saw it. I mean, I was always an operator. Yes, I became a senior manager. I was deputy division chief. I was chief of station, deputy chief of station. I've done all that. But first and foremost, when I look in the mirror, I don't see Ric Prado with his feet up on a desk. I see Ric Prado pounding the streets when nobody else is looking. So, and I think that's the majority of my colleagues. And that again is the reason that I wrote the book because I want people to take a look at it. And if their kid comes to them 3 years later and go, Daddy, Mommy, I want to be a CIA operations officer, they don't send it to, psychiatric treatment or something because they understand, okay, so this is what they do. Yes, it's esoteric. Yes, it's shadowy. But my God, these guys and gals really put it on the line to get the information that helps everything else that we have as a defense mechanism be able to be triggered and functioned. So
Yeah, and I think also sort of the political types where it's seemingly their sole ambition is progress for the sake of progress, climbing the ladder for the sake of getting higher up on the ladder. And that doesn't mean that, they're all bad. I'm sure there are a lot of people that are legitimately trying to do the right thing. But even at it's a kind of it's a shitty irony where it's like, yeah, there are good people and there are bad people. Well, are they evenly distributed? Well, actually, the bad people tend to stab everyone in the back, meaning they get higher and higher up. So even if they're only 1% are bad, they have control of 98%. You go, oh, that sucks. But I think in general, you have that personality type of flaw are the ones at that level where whether or not they even believe the rationalization, some might need a rationalized. There might be a little shred of a soul still in there. I think some are just outright. It's psychopath. Get away with it if you can. I don't, and I can say why. I'm not just saying this because I have you on here. I look at, all the guests I've had, and then I look at guys like you or Baz or Dale, Ron Moeller, the first three ground branch, other air branch. And even in comparison to just like the other military guys I've had on, guys my age who were, enlisted in GWAT to SF or Delta. And I go, yeah, if there was anybody that like I wouldn't want to piss off, or even just how I do the show. Just make sure I put on a clean shirt and like, you know, show up on time. There's just and some of the doctors. But there just seems to be almost like a no, that's a guy I really, there's no, I can't pull an excuse because they don't have excuses. Just in that frame, how in God's name can I then rationalize? Yeah, but other than them, if I was in the agency, I bet you can just go shoot, world leaders. And it's like, yeah, I don't, who else do you think works there? If you get one and he's a Prado, you go, okay, that's a respectable guy. You meet another, you go, Bass, you go, okay. Then you get Dale, then you get Brian, and you start going, you go, well, I've met six, and all six are just buttoned up. It's not yes or no. It's just like rationally. If you keep flipping the quarter, you go. I would imagine there's probably a high level of rigor there. And if you went in there and go, when are we knocking over this? They'll probably throw you out into the parking lot. Like, but the flip side is, well, then where do those people thrive? Well, they thrive at the highest levels of political office where there isn't any of that. There is no, they don't care. And that, that's a whole nother discussion for another time. But yeah, I
But
could.
I think that there's a difference between political ambition outside your career field. Like, well, someday I want to go be a senator, God forbid, or something like that. It ain't gonna happen. But the internal part of it is very healthy because again, you as you go up the ranks and you learn, your real contribution becomes not only what you're doing, but who you're grooming. That is I'm as proud of my proteges that as I am of some of the high speed, low drag ninja shit that I got to do in the agency.
Yeah.
Because I back now and I see these guys and they're carrying on the torch. They're doing the same kind of crap, sometimes more, sometimes, and I'll give you an example. My deputy in the last group that I had, the teams that I briefed Cheney on that you're aware of because reading the book, um, he was a GS-14 when I brought him into my group, and he was my deputy. He retired as an SIS-5,
You were too.
and I was a 2. And when to this day, when he calls me, first words out of his mouth is, "How's it going, Chief?" I go, "Dude, I should be calling you Chief." That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen. So for us, that's a huge, badge of honor, um, is knowing that not only did you have a good career and not only did you do a lot of good stuff, but look what prepared other individuals, and look what they in turn are doing as they grow through the ranks. I had one an anecdote. One of my guys he was with me in Shangri-La, another country I can't tell about, but it was a very hairy, very, very hairy a time that we were there, Indian territory, very radical Muslim in Africa stuff. And I one of the guys that I picked is his former Army Ranger, Mogadishu vet, smart as hell. And he did the first tour with me. He was also on my team when at the end of my career, he was one of my teammates there too. But the funny thing was when he went on his own in Iraq, I think he was chief of base in Mosul or something. The guys would come back and they would come to my office and they go, you know what? You know that guy? He runs the station exactly the same way that you ran us when we were in Shangri-La. I mean, it is we have the same meetings at the same time, the same questions and that's makes you feel good.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward about a year after I find this out, he comes back, and as soon as he comes back, he looks me up. We go have a couple of beers and a burger. He's a big burger guy. So we're sitting there at Clyde's having, half a pound burger. And I mentioned to him the fact that, hey, I hear that. He says, boss, he says, when I don't know what to do or where I'm at, I sit back and go, what would Dragon do? That was my handle was Dragon. What would Dragon do? I wear that as a medal of
Yeah.
honor for because here is a guy I mean, he's the real freaking deal. I mean, Mogadishu, Black Hawk Down kind of guy who's now a case officer in real shitty places, and he retired as an SIS-4, you know, and here he is running the base based on what he learned from me. That's perpetuity of pride. So
No, it's as with this podcast, my dad grew up super poor and then rose high through business and sales and put four kids through private Catholic school and stay-at-home mom, whole nine yards. My dad never wanted to like sell poultry growing up, but like that's just what he did, and he did it insanely well and was insanely successful. And even though I don't think my dad would know how to like turn on my iMac, I do often go, what would like my dad do if he was right here? And he is. I mean, I just saw him, but and even though it has like the comical answers like, well, he wouldn't know how to. I'm like, yeah, yeah, I get that. Like, shut the fuck up. What would he do? And that's where it comes into the whole. And it served me well. And there are times when it doesn't serve well at first, where you go, man, I really could have had this interview, could have had that sponsor. But even now, 6 years into it, where I'm much more confident in like who I am and what I tell guests on and off air. A lot of times there was a shortcut either to finances or to more views or to a bigger guest. And and I didn't do it. And when I look at it now, and now I'm slowly, and that's not why I do it, but I start to have other people who are senior to me or with their own shows that are bigger than me, and they're like, "How did you know to do that?" And I always tell them like, I just think of like two things my dad. I'm like, work harder than everyone else, legitimately. I mean, Irish Catholic, like Puritan guilt, work hard, be grateful for the Lord. But then also I go, just do the right thing. And I don't mean do the right thing like you're a surgeon, do the right thing. It's like, well, you got to go to 15 years of school to know what the right thing is. No, no, no. I mean, cut the bullshit. What's the right thing? The right thing would be to, I don't know, not record me, Mr. Prado, talking if I tell him I'm not recording. It would be to not, ambush you with some BS question or to have Ken Albeck on and go, well, I'm just going to ask him about bioweapons and then I'll upload that clip. Like that'll be sensational. It's just simple, like, hey, cut the bullshit. What's the right thing to do? You don't need to know anything about podcasting. I don't know. Put on a clean shirt, make sure the internet works. You have the book ready to plug. Show them respect and just shoot the shit. And you say you have an out, I'll give you an out, and it doesn't. But you don't want to hear that. In the same way, you go, how can I feel better physically and mentally? You know what to do. Cut down some calories, go lift some weights, go do some. I'm not saying you got to be an Olympian. Go do some light cardio, go for a walk. You should probably read a little bit each day. It's good to learn. Call your family members, text them, even just a simple hey, let them know you love them. And like what I do every day is I just try to be grateful for three things. And sometimes it's as simple as like my air conditioner get just kicked on. I went, thank you, God, for having a functioning air conditioner. It would kind of suck to not have one in August. I go, thank you for clean drinking water. I mean, that alone is a huge luxury. But even these little things, like you know what to do. Get 8 hours of sleep, go to the gym, eat healthy, drink a lot of water, read a book, get right with God. Everyone knows that, but you're looking for something else. You know what to do. And so when you said, that's pride and perpetuity, yeah, that's kind of and I'm not doing it to like kiss my dad's ass. I'm just like, what would my old man do? He would show up, he would make sure he had the book read, and he just would be honest. It doesn't matter what things dangled around you. Go, is that the right thing to do? No, then don't do it. It really is that simple. But, you know, it's a lot easier to paint it as some shadowy. Actually, Ric Prado went on Tommy's podcast. This is actually his newest assignment. He's not retired. There's no such thing as ex agency. And Tommy's actually, how do you think?
Yeah, I'm getting you to kill somebody.
Yeah, if that happens, hey, man, whatever. I, I don't, I don't know.
It's
But
out there. And this is why, I get asked a lot of things about former colleagues and guys like Eric Prince and stuff like that, who are very dear friend. We worked
sure.
together for many years, and I always tell people, I said, look, I'm an intel officer. I don't know what people are doing. I read the media just like everybody else, except I don't believe 99%. I don't care if it's far right or far left. Everybody's got that agenda. I don't look at the news. I read the news every morning. I have 5 or 6 sources that I look at for what's going on in the world. I don't need no talking head for 32 minutes telling me what this means. I know what that means. But as an intel officer, conspiracy theories are so alien to us because we have to have the facts.
Yeah.
You have to have but people will sit there in a chair, have a bourbon and go, I bet you that this is why they did that. And you sit there and you go, where the hell did
What are you
that
talking about?
you know. So, conspiracy theories are out there, and I don't follow them. I only comment on the things that I know firsthand, and at my tender age of in my 70s, that's getting less and less and less that I know what the hell is going on, other than my dog needs to go out for a walk.
And that's all you should do. That's all you should draw the forces back in. Yeah, focus on the here and now. Yeah, no, I think the conspiracy should always be sexier than the reality. And it's to me, what's like far cooler than me being an asset would be like, wait, if you actually just get a laptop and before you even have a microphone, just start interviewing people. Who'd you interview? Just text your friend and just start making it up as you go. I'm like, that's so much cooler to me than like being an asset. I'm like the idea that you could build something out of nothing. It's like starting in the woods and then creating a house. I'm like, that's so much cooler than being an a but you don't want to because what it ultimately means is people don't want to see that because if they see that, they know it's possible. And if they know it's possible, it's a reflection on them for why they haven't pursued the things they want to pursue, be it sobriety, weight loss, marriage, building a job, inventing something, going to grad school. You don't want to see that. You want to write it off and go, there's no way he could have done that because deep down, you know, if you admit that someone can do it, that you could do it too. And the only thing holding you back is your own will. And that's not a fun thing to look at in the mirror. So in a sense, I get it. Um, but I said I'll let you go. We're 2 minutes up. And so I will let you go. But Mr. Prado, dude, it's awesome having you on here. I love talking to you. You're a cool guy. And guys, please go into the description. Please go grab the book. It's on Audible. Just get the book and hit play. That's part of you want to be a better person, start reading and start with this book. So please do that. And Mr. Prado, closing thoughts, anything?
No, but I once you stop recording, there is something I want to
Yeah. Let me make sure. So everybody, here's the sign off. Take care. God bless. Thanks for watching. Well,